From paper and pencil to Wi-Fi and AI, education is ever evolving. On this new season of Teachers in America, we'll keep you on the forefront of what's new. We connect with teachers and ed leaders to talk trending topics and real issues, bringing you inspiring ideas that will influence the future of your teaching. Today, host Kaylee Rhodes connects with fellow middle school math teacher Camyrea Barnes. Camyrea teaches 8th grade pre-algebra and algebra in Wayne Westland Community School District in Michigan. She believes that with the right mindset and community support, students can take on any math challenge. As a leader on her school's positive behavior interventions and supports team, Camyrea is also dedicated to fostering a supportive classroom environment. In this episode, she shares how she nurtures a growth mindset and builds community with her students and peers. Now, here's Kaylee and Camyrea.
Welcome, Camyrea. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Let's jump into some questions. Middle school math is so unique. So, as a math teacher myself, I started in English. And then I was like one of those people that never thought of myself as a math person, which now I know to never say around my kids. But finding myself in the math classroom was the best thing that ever happened to me. So why math? How did you end up as a math teacher?
So I've always been a numbers girl. I love numbers. I love the arithmetic. I played the violin when I was younger, and I realized me counting the beats and counting the measures, I love that. So I've always been into math. And I was like, okay, so I want to do something math related for a career. So I was thinking to myself, what can I do with math as a career? So then I also admired my mom a lot. My mom was a huge public servant in Detroit Public Schools, and she served a lot of families with children with disabilities. And she was an advocate for them, showing families how to ask questions during the IEP, how to have conversation with teachers about their child's 504 plan, empowering kids like me, little Black kids like me, empowering them on how to advocate for themselves in the class. And I just saw my mom doing that. I'm like, oh, maybe I could do something with public service and math. But I never thought about math teacher. It never clicked to me, math teacher. But what clicked to me was when I was in high school, my senior year, I had a job where I worked at a summer math camp as a high school teacher assistant. And I got to teach middle school students math over the summer. And I fell in love with the craft of teaching, not just the content of math, but just the building the trust, fostering community, having relationships, connecting with people that you would never thought you would connect with. I fell in love with that. And I was like, wow, like I can be an inspiration and do math at the same time as a math teacher. So all that whole experience is how I end up here as a fifth-year math teacher.
That's beautiful. I mean, and hearing you talk about like the relationship building and math, can you speak to a little bit about how necessary it is to build those student relationships and really foster that community uniquely in the math classroom and the math classroom space?
Right. It is so important. Like, I don't think people realize, like, people think math is just like straight up like numbers, like you get straight to one answer, which a lot of times it can be like that. But math is such a challenging subject where if you feel defeated, you're not going to be able to do as well because of that defeated or fixed mindset. So as a teacher, even like during my years of preparing to be a teacher or even in my classroom experience, I realized how it's so important for me to connect with my kids when they have those discouraging moments. Me just giving them an uplifting word and saying, hey, you got this, like you're already on the right track, how that light bulb would go off for them. And they will literally be a whole different mindset, a whole different framework to just start hitting the ground running with all of that. So I was just super, super grateful to just be able to experience that relationship building with them in the math classroom. And if you don't know your kids, if you don't know your students, you can't expect them to be able to be fully motivated or to be able to have that, what's the word for that, work ethic or that effort to want to be successful in math.
There's something weird about math where it feels more exposed than maybe other subjects. Are you seeing that in your students, or do you feel that as a teacher?
When you say exposed, can you like expound on that for me a little bit?
Like It seems like the failure to success ratio in terms of emotions in class, coming from the English classroom, it
Mhm.
felt like having students sometimes even like read a poem in front of the class that they wrote. I was like, they're probably really scared. And then I became a math teacher and I was like, they are way more afraid to come to the math
Mhm.
board and do an equation on the board than like read a poem they wrote. And so like this fear or this like feeling very exposed in the math classroom. Like how do you see that as a teacher and how do you confront it with that growth mindset for your kids?
So it's interesting because during my first year of teaching, what you just said exactly what I experienced my first year of teaching. So when I came into my classroom, I was that first year energy, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to change the world and be an inspiration for my kids. And I'm going to teach them math and I'm going to be able to do so many great
And they're gonna make a
projects.
movie of me.
Exactly. I'm gonna be Instagram famous and they're gonna want to invite me on the news station to show how great I have changed these kids' lives. And when I tell you that first week of teaching, actually that my first math lesson I did, it was a lesson on teaching the kids or just doing some review on like seventh grade math,
Mhm.
reviewing, adding and subtracting integers. I'm like, okay, y'all, so can we all come into the kids to have a volunteer come into the board to show me their work? Mute. No one didn't want to come up. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. I was like, okay, how about you? So I saw your work, it was great. How about you come on up? They came up, they put the wrong answer up there. And at first I was about to say something, then their other classes saying, man, that's wrong. Like there was just like really like tearing the student down. And then the student and the two students started going back and forth with each other. And I was like, oh, this is not how I
Nightmare.
planned out to be.
Nightmare.
It was a nightmare. My dreams of being on the news stations got
I'm gonna be on the news
really
for a different reason.
exactly. Exactly. It just went all the way out. So I was just so in that moment, I was like, okay, so maybe calling the kids up on the board wasn't the best thing to do right then and there.
Mm.
But at the same time, I was like, I want my kids to have that exposure to be okay to make mistakes. So I believe in that moment, I took that moment as I could laugh about it now, but back then I was really like embarrassed. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. But in that moment, it taught me and it showed me like, okay, Camyrea, we have to think about something different. Like we need to do something different to try to get these kids to be not afraid to mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started my whole journey of researching ways, having conversations, and just thinking of different methods to encourage kids to be okay to fail or be okay to mess up. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started learning more about fixed versus growth mindset and effort when in the
Yeah.
math classroom.
Do you talk with your kids explicitly about fixed versus growth mindset?
Oh, absolutely, I do. That's actually during my first 2 weeks of teaching. I don't teach no kind of math. All we do is classroom building, setting up expectations for our classroom, creating a classroom culture, and talk about growth versus fixed mindset, and something I do in my classroom called effort level. And we talk about explicitly what a fixed mindset is, where you have a mindset that, oh, your abilities are fixed. There's no purpose of growing. You're born with your talents. You cannot grow or anything versus a growth mindset that says, you know what, if I keep practicing, if I keep trying, if I keep putting that effort towards this task, then I can be successful. And I have that conversation with my kids explicitly during the first 2 weeks where I introduce it to them outside of the math context, where we talk about, I have them break up into groups where I show them videos or clips in different episodes and TV shows of different characters showing, yes, it's amazing. And I love it so much because the kids, I break them up into groups where they have to watch the clips. I show the clips to the entire class, and the kids in their groups have to determine if it's a fixed versus growth mindset that the characters display, and they have to write a reasoning as to why.
Mm.
And after that, the next day we start talking about, okay, y'all, so based on these examples, can you name some specific times where you yourself has had a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? And I have them reflect it, they write it down, and then they pair up with a partner and they share it with the partner. And then sometimes I'll give them the autonomy, okay, if you like to share, just raise your hand. If not, then you share with the partner. And we just have like full on discussion about growth versus fixed mindset. And then I asked them, okay, for math this year,
Mm-hmm.
what do you believe is the perfect mindset to have when you are doing math? And I'm glad I do it before I introduce the math to them because a lot of times I feel like teachers or educators, they introduce a growth versus fixed mindset while they're teaching a curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're teaching it to them, when you're teaching it to a growth versus fixed mindset before, like, why are you teaching about hard content? That's going to discourage them a little bit more. It's going to be hard for them to really apply what they are learning.
Right.
So I really found a lot of my success really introducing that growth versus fixed mindset within our community building. So during my lessons, my language to them is centered around a growth mindset. And they could understand, like, oh, Ms. Barnes expect me to think this way and not just to say, I can't do this, but instead say, you know what, this is challenging, but I'm going to keep working at it.
Yeah, it feels like you're so right to speak to the intentionality of like, I think a lot of us of educators are really reluctant to like give up content time. But I'm so fascinated about how teachers kick off their year because it's so important to invest in stuff like that at the top of the year so that kids really understand that you're not introducing growth or fixed mindset, in month 2 as a response to how they're not doing well or something.
Right.
It's like laying the red carpet for like, this is the path we're going to walk, no matter if you
Mhm.
have no idea what kind of math I'm about to show you, 2 plus 2 or like define X, you don't know.
Right.
So
Mhm.
either way, you have to approach it with this mindset. And it makes me curious about this group that you lead of positive behavior interventions and supports. How much,
Mhm.
I mean, like, I imagine it's very difficult for you to not bring in all the skills that you have from that into your math class. But can you talk to us a little bit about just like that isolatedly and like what that's about and maybe how it shows up in your math class as your skill set?
Of course. So one thing that I do, so as you just said, I'm the leader of our positive behavior intervention supports team at my school. And we are a group of teachers who basically are trying to create strategies to support students in the classroom. And we usually focus on behavior, but the behavior goes to the academics because if you have a structure and consistency in your classroom,
Mhm.
it transfers to the students' work ethic. So a lot of times in that group, I meet with my peers, I meet with my administration, I meet with my behavior team, and we all talk about different methods that we as a team can present to our staff at staff meetings, methods and strategies they can use to promote a positive culture within their own classroom setting.
Mhm.
So that most definitely transpires into my classroom a lot because a lot of those strategies that we talk about, I do try in my class. For
Yeah, you
instance, we
pilot
talk
them.
about right, exactly piloting. So for instance, there was one time where I wanted to pilot a chance for students to take a break in my class because we had a big thing at our school where teachers wanted to send kids out when they were being disruptive or not on task. But a lot of us on the leadership team said, well, if we do that, are we really doing restorative practices with the kids instead of just sending them out? So what I do is I try to have the kids take a break where if I'm sending them into the hallway, they know you're coming right back in after 60 seconds. 60 seconds,
Mhm.
2 minutes, you're coming right back into that classroom. You're not
Mhm.
going to stay out in the hallway for the entire time. You're coming back in. And when I come to talk to you, it's going to be a conversation as to what happened, what can we do to relieve the issue, what frustrations are you having? And what I notice is when I ask my kids those questions, instead of automatically putting them as the target or like they're the issue, they're like the problem,
Yeah.
but I'm addressing it as is like there's a problem that they're having a hard time processing. They were able to answer those questions where I would have students telling me, you know, Ms. Barnes, this math is really complicated. I don't get this. I don't understand this. It's boring. And I say, you know, thank you for that feedback.
Mhm.
So what can I do as a teacher to try to help you become more engaged? What can we do right now in this moment? Sometimes the kids will say, they'll give me a reason. Sometimes they'll say, I don't know. And I'll tell them, well, let's do it this way. Can we just do this for today? And we'll think of something else in the near future. And doing that conversations helped me build rapport with my students and it
Yeah.
created a positive classroom environment. And that was a strategy that I was able to use and take from our leadership team when we talked about it and present that in my classroom. And then that when I saw that worked, I was able to tell my other staff members like, hey, like this is a good strategy to use. Just talk to the kids. When you talk to them, they will tell you a lot more than you would actually think or perceive.
It seems like what you're also telling the kid, like us following a kid out, us sending a kid out in the hallway is like, I don't want you. I don't want you
Right.
here. You're
Mm-hmm.
be gone. But like
Mm-hmm.
allowing them 60 seconds and then going and retrieving them with a conversation is, I want you here. How can I keep
Right.
you here? And even if their
Mhm.
answer is, I don't know how, it's like the fact that you go and seek them out and like make them feel wanted and like a part of the classroom, I imagine is pretty transformative.
Yeah, and that's why I always say this is something that I will say I learned within my first 5 years of teaching is the fact that our classrooms are the most transformative place ever. We as teachers have the power to do so much great work in the classroom, despite the uncontrollable factors that come to play. Like I'm a public school teacher, so a lot of the things that happen that are out of my control due to things that are happening on the state or federal level I have no control over. But what I can say is, I'm going to do everything I can within my space to make sure that I'm still promoting that positivity. And because that positivity can help transform a kid into being the person that you know they can be to help them recognize their own greatness and be successful.
And want to come to class on Monday
Yes.
because you will notice that they're not there.
Right.
Hey, teacher friends! If you're an HMH user, did you know you have access to Teachers Corner on Ed? Included with every HMH program, Teachers Corner is a community of teachers, learning experts, and instructional coaches gathered in one place to support you with a new kind of professional learning. Bite-sized, teacher-selected, and teacher-driven. With on-demand sessions, lesson demonstrations, program support, and practical resources, Teachers Corner lets you choose how you interact with our content. I like to think about it as inspiration on demand.
Well,
Right.
speaking of like just going back a little bit to math,
Mhm.
finding, we were talking about your first day when you had them come to the board and you're like, woof, this is maybe not the first thing I should do. And I completely resonate with that. Like day one of my math class was never math. It was always about I wanted to find out like their math trauma, the math trauma they were showing up with in my class because I taught foundational math most recently, and it was just they came in with so many math scars. They're just like so beat down about their math ability and getting them in the room and being like, let's just reset. Let's make I don't if you have math nervousness, if you have math anxiety, math trauma, cool, great. No problem. But as teaching algebra 1 in a middle school, which some middle schools don't even have algebra 1, not even offering that level of math at that age yet. I imagine though, even pre-COVID, but especially post-COVID, they're coming in a couple grade levels below that ask. And can you talk about like bridging those? What foundational skills are you noticing? Like you've no matter what year, no matter
Right.
what, you're going to have to hit, even though it's not on that Algebra 1 curriculum. Do you have any
Right.
secret sauce that you're pouring all over that kind of foundational stuff? And what's that looking like bridging that gap?
Yeah, and I want to speak on you bringing up math trauma because that is a big thing. A lot of people don't realize the math trauma that kids experience from their peers, from parents or guardians, from teachers,
Like me
from their
saying I'm not a
classroom.
math person
Right.
is fixed
Yep.
mindset. If I said that to my
Yep.
kid,
Yeah, that exactly. So you bringing up the whole bridging the gap part. A lot of it is it's not like where I have like a secret formula. Like, oh, like if you do like this and put this and that together, you get to have an amazing classroom. It's just more so like you said, addressing that math trauma. So something I do at the beginning of the year with my Algebra 1 kids. At my school, that's considered the advanced math class. So there's
yeah.
pre-algebra for all the eighth graders, and then Algebra 1 for my advanced. I use quotation for
Yeah, you're
advanced.
quoting right now. Yeah.
For advanced for my eighth graders. And a lot of them do come in with some gaps from missing from whatever they missed from seventh grade, sixth grade, fifth grade, whatsoever. One of the things I know a lot of my kids do not have the ability to achieve yet is a lot of times just making connections from what they previously learned.
Yeah.
So something that I do with my kids often is they reflect. I have my kids reflect. And my kids say all the time, Miss Barnes, you always have us writing as a math class. I'm like, well, you're going to continue to write because in the math class, you need to write.
Yeah.
And if your teacher doesn't make you write in the math class, then you need to ask them if you can start writing because when they journal and they reflect on what they've learned and think about what level of understanding that they're at, it helps them see, okay, I know I need to understand, let's say, for instance, you're learning about graphing. I need to understand the coordinate plane. If I don't know how to plot a point on the coordinate plane, I cannot graph a linear equation.
No.
So I do a lot of journaling and I prompt them to journal every time we do a lesson as an exit ticket or even like as an activity. I have them sit for 2 minutes and I have them write down in their notebooks or on their bell worksheet I tell them, write down what level of understanding do you believe you are? Do you believe at the beginning, approaching, proficient, or skilled? Or not skilled, mastered. Where I have them write down what level they believe they're at and how can you make sure you can get to that master level. Why do you believe you're at that level? What skills do you believe you are missing based on the lesson we just did with this concept? And what can you do to make sure you get to that ultimate level of master where you can be the teacher? And give Ms. Barnes a break. That's like but me doing that, knowing and expecting that from my students and being realistic with myself, because I feel like a lot of times teachers we can have some unrealistic expectations for our kids, which is not, and not a bad thing to a degree, but at the same time it could cause us for not being able to be open and vulnerable and honest with our students when it comes to engaging them with their content.
Right. And it can make us feel like a failure because they're not at this level that the standards are indicating that they should be at and I'm doing air quotes now, should be at this grade level. And that's a challenge for teachers everywhere. It's a challenge to see the standards, feel like we're not teaching the standards, feel like our kids aren't at the standard, feel like they didn't arrive in our classroom ready to learn that standard. Like just talk about mindset. We have to have it. We have to have a growth mindset and also like be incredibly compassionate towards ourselves as educators because we're moving mountains because every child is a mountain and we got to move them all.
No, I agree with that most definitely. Yeah, so when I bridged the gap for my Algebra 1 kids, so that was like, so for me, it comes down to like the abstract part of teaching, the concrete part. The abstract part is that reflection work down, really taking time to understand where they're at. Me having one-on-one conferences with the kids on a certain days of the week. Well, I would just meet with kids one-on-one about their test scores, talk to them about what they believe, like what happened for them to achieve that test score. Are they satisfied with that test score? Sometimes the reflection is individual, sometimes it's peer-to-peer reflection, sometimes it's a whole class reflection. And we have some straight up honest conversations. I'll pull up the class NWA scores, like their district assessment scores as a class, what that class score meant. Is the class at grade level? If the class is at grade level, what areas do we need to focus on to improve it? Or what areas do we need to stay? Do we want to grow more in?
Yeah, I'm like, what's working? Why are we here? Why is it working?
Yeah, we have some really transparent conversation. I've been asked the kids, I have conversations with the kids about like their barriers to success. Like what is causing you to be not successful? Is it you coming to class on time, keep you from being successful? Is it you talk with a friend? Like what are you doing in class? Are you actively taking notes? Are you asking questions? I point it all out with my kids. We as a class, we have those conversations so they can see, for one, Ms. Barnes wants to see them succeed, but for two, for them to see for themselves that they have the power to be successful. It's all lies within them. It's just my job.
And you're there facilitating it. It just seems like you are offering consistent resetting judgment. Like you're not you don't like have a rap sheet. You don't have a ledger.
No.
It's just every day like what's going on? Come back.
Right.
Reflect.
Yeah, and it's a lot of reflection. And I noticed that I did a lot of more reflection these past 2 years, me teaching, and I noticed a big shift in my kids when it came to their math goals. Like for instance, this past year, I had close to about 70% of my kids meet their district assessment goals. And that's a huge deal for my kids because they're kids that people would not expect to even care about math, to even care about school in general. But I had kids who were literally going from like a 4th grade, 5th grade level into the school year with a 6th grade, 7th grade level. And even though it may not be an 8th grade level, it's way higher.
Growth, baby.
Yeah, it's all about that growth. And I told the kids, I showed them their score. I'm like, look at the amount of work y'all have done. And that reflection was a big thing for them because they were able to say, they could communicate, Miss Barnes, I'm at a beginning level because I missed these 2 days of lessons. I need to go into a small group lesson with you. Like they're
telling you what they need.
Exactly. And that's the goal I believe every teacher should want to have for their students, especially at the middle school level, students need to learn how to advocate for themselves. They're about to go off to high school. They're about to be adults. I know my personal goal is that I want my kids to be able to be champions for themselves and advocate for themselves because we live in a world where not everybody's going to advocate for them. We have to be your own advocate and be your own support to survive and to manage in the society we live in today.
Mm, yep. That was amazing. It kind of bleeds into your future educators class. You teach a future
Mm,
educators class.
I
Can,
do.
can you tell me what that's about? Who's in it? What are you doing?
All right, so Future Educators is a class of seventh and eighth graders, just teaching them about the world of teaching. So
Oh my God,
telling
we're getting
them,
them that
yes,
young? Oh my
yes.
gosh.
And I love it because in the class we started out, this is my first year of teaching it. And in the class, I tell them we learn about the different paths teachers take. So whether they want to do secondary, post-secondary, elementary, um, infant preschool. And then on top of that, we talk about the abstract and concrete parts of teaching. So we talk about lesson planning, what teachers do during conferences, but we also have the abstract part about being a community. Why is it important for teachers to understand the students' social and personal identities? At the beginning of the year in the Future Educators class, the kids were able to do an identity activity where they had to list out their personal and social identities and how those identities will come up in a classroom setting with their students. So how can I, as a teacher, make that kid feel supported in my classroom?
Wow.
So that right there was so powerful because for one, I wasn't really saying much. The kids were able to, I introduced the topic and the kids just facilitated the conversation themselves. And it got them to be closer with each other when they got to see how those personal identities, like their personality traits and their social identities that we were really born with, that we really can't change, how those identities interact and how they coexist in the classroom space. And I also have them reflecting on how some of their teachers interact with
Mm-hmm.
them in those spaces. And
Mm-hmm.
then we will have conversations about, what happens in the classroom space and how can teachers improve or even make better or keep doing what they're doing to make their classmates feel welcomed.
I mean, this is stuff that I did in my graduate studies as a teacher.
Mhm.
Can you imagine if we had had access to that kind of thing in middle school?
It would be amazing. I love it so much. I
I
love the
imagine that it
concept a lot.
transforms them as students too. Like
Yes, it does.
their presence in a classroom, the way they show up in a classroom is completely
Hmm.
different. I imagine their empathy for the teacher is like through the
Yes.
roof.
Yes, it is. We have a lot of we have conversations about classroom management. We talked about how, like when we had a discussion one day with my students and I talked to them about, my struggles as a teacher. I just came from my class the previous hour. They were just really not the best that day. They weren't showing at their highest level that day. So when my future teachers class came in, I was like, y'all, I'm gonna just let y'all know, like, my last class was really like this today. It made me feel very disappointed and overwhelmed. And we had a whole conversation about, what happened in that class period and how that affects teachers and their overall work ethic and how that can drain the teacher's energy. And the kids, they were understanding. And then some of the kids gave like some feedback as to like, you know what, well, I could tell my teacher's having a bad day because of how they interact with that class right after it. And I tell them, well, do you think that's the right thing for teachers to do? Do you think teachers have a right to let out their frustrations or to be upset? And we had a whole productive conversation about teachers and the amount of work and expectation we have on ourselves. And it was just so powerful and transformative to hear them talk about, to hear that empathy and
Yeah.
that connection
And that
with.
being validated. Like who's getting more out of this, you or them?
Right, right. I feel like it's just like a whole like collective like healing kumbaya. But I love those kind of moments because it brings us closer as a class and community. And people tell me all the time, like, Miss Barnes, like your classroom's always quiet, they're always on task. I don't really hear about kids misbehaving. I'm like, well, I don't have a magic wand. I know the importance of building a community and making sure kids feel safe. If I don't feel safe in my classroom, then I know my kids most definitely don't feel safe in that classroom. So we all got to be on the same page as teachers and students to build that culture of care and that culture of compassion. Really.
Listening. It sounds like you
Yeah.
listen to them just as much as they listen to you, which
Hmm.
is like the key.
Yeah.
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of keys, what is what's your advice for new teachers? What's your advice?
So I consider myself a new teacher still because I'm only 5 years in,
But
but
that's amazing. Like the national average, you're above it. So
I know I
like,
am above it. I met the goal. I met the benchmark.
but
So
you know what?
yes.
Like that perspective of like humility probably keeps you really sharp. So like when you've been a teacher for 20 years, keep thinking you're new, right?
I got you. Yes. So I have a couple of things. So one thing I would say is, as a new teacher, be authentic, be yourself, know how you are showing up in the classroom setting. We got to reflect as much as the kids need to reflect. When I first started teaching, I had to realize that, okay, I'm showing up as a young Black female teacher.
Yep.
And I have sisters and I'm a daughter. So I'm showing up as that. And when I recognized how I was showing up, it kept me to be authentic with myself and finding ways to connect with my kids who probably share those same identities. And also for me to put the work in for kids who may not experience those same things. Another thing too, my vice principal, my first year teacher, she sent me an article called Find Your Marigold. And in the article, it talks about how new teachers have to find their marigolds, find your people who make you happy, who bring you joy. And that's the advice I would give to any new teacher. Find people in your school, or if there's nobody in your school, join an organization. Find people who you can vent to, but they will problem solve with you. I was very fortunate, and I am still fortunate to have people at my school who I can vent to and they will problem solve with me. They won't spew out more negativity and complain with me and
And they won't tell
just
you to stop. They won't tell you to not
exactly.
vent. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
that's not the answer either.
Right. They will give me some strategies. They'll listen to me. Like I have an amazing instructional coach. I'll call her my work mom. She is legit like yes. I have to shout out Robin Tuberville. Like she is an amazing instructional coach. And she legit allowed me to have a space to vent, but then will problem solve and strategize with me on different methods of teaching when I would have those frustrations of having students 3 grade levels behind, and I'm expected to still teach a grade level course at the same time and still trying to meet all the standards and hit the standards so I can still meet the quota. But having those group of people there to strategize with me and to encourage me to let me know I'm still doing a great job really helped me during my first few years of teaching. So I would just say that to any new teacher out there, like keep being your authentic self. Don't let anybody at your school, your family discourage you from teaching. If you know that you still want to show up despite the challenge, then do it and find people who will consistently and motivate you and empower you to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Because we got the power as teachers. We
And
do.
I feel like even in any workplace, like we can even just talk about like maybe like my mom was a nurse and she had really similar advice. She was like, this is a hard profession. Nursing is a hard profession, just like teaching. And so because it's hard and because, if we had magic wands, we would be waving them all the time at everything, every direction, bippity boppity, everything. And she was just like, you're going to be around people who, the negativity is going to feel seductive. It's going to feel like the right place to go because there is hardship. So it's going to feel real. But I love your advice about find those people, even if they're not at your school, even if they're online, they're educators that you meet on social media that let you vent and then problem solve. I love that advice.
Yeah, it was most definitely. I feel like if I didn't have that, I would not have this much wisdom or expertise in my belt without that. Excuse me, without that group of people. So
Your marigolds.
yeah, my marigolds. Shout out to my marigolds, and they know who they are too.
Well, actually, we're gonna probably move into rapid fire questions, and I'll just reorder one of these. So I'm gonna ask you like 3 that are like sentences. They're not single words. So they're a warm up to our rapid fire round. We'll do the first one. Any favorite teacher, colleague, instructional coach, mentor, shout outs that you want to give?
Well, I just gave the shout out to Robin Tuberville, but I'll do it again. Shout out to Robin Tuberville, my instructional coach. I call her my work mom. She's amazing. I love her so much. And any school district or school who has her, you're blessed. It's a privilege to have Robin Tuberville. So that's who I want to shout out right now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. You ready for question number 2?
Yes.
Warm-up question.
Okay.
Kind of segued from your advice to first year teachers. What rookie mistake did you make? Yeah, I'm looking at your face. Are you reliving it? What rookie mistake did you make your first year teaching?
I'm trying to think, do I want to share the one that's most embarrassing or the one that, is pretty courteous?
Both.
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 So I'll share like the teaching mistake and then like the whole embarrassing mistake. So
Mhm.
teaching mistake that I made. So when I first started teaching now, I didn't realize the impact and how important it was to tell students what to bring to class because I was just automatically expecting them to bring stuff to class.
Mhm.
So literally, I kid you not, like the first 2 weeks of school, I'm like, why these kids don't got no pencils? They got no notebooks, no nothing. They should know to come to school with it. So that third week of teaching, I was so upset. And then one of the kids, they were saying, well, Ms. Barnes, you never told us to bring a pencil and a notebook to class. And I'm like, you know what? I should have told them to
Yeah,
bring,
there's no such thing as y'all should know
yeah,
unless we've said it.
yeah,
And we
unless we
don't.
said it. And exactly, I never said it. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I never told y'all to bring a pencil and a notebook to class. I just expected y'all know to bring a pencil and notebook to a math class, stuff like that. And
We've got to make instructions explicit.
right, that part,
Yeah.
that part. And then the second embarrassing thing that happened to me. So when I was teaching, I had on press-on nails. I flung my finger. I flung my finger. My
You were like
press-on nail
gesturing.
just gesturing something. I think I was getting really into the lesson. The kids were grinding. We were in the lesson. I flinged my
X
finger.
squared.
Right. I flinged my finger. My press-on nail fell off, and it landed in the middle of the floor. And I can't even like play it off or anything because the kids they saw it and they just looked at me. And I was glad that none of my kids said anything in that moment. Only a couple of girls came to me like after bringing me my nail back.
Oh
And I was
my
like, I'm
God.
like, thank you for not doing that to me in the moment, in the heat of the moment, because that would have been so embarrassing. But and
Listen,
that was my forgiveness.
these kids, they can like love on us in unexpected ways. It's weird.
Yes,
It's
it's very
weird.
weird. It's weird. So if
Can't predict it.
you can't know exactly. You can't if you're gonna wear nails, make sure your nails are secure.
And make sure your hand motions are in slow motion.
Exactly that
Oh
part.
my God, that is so funny. Last longer warm-up rapid fire question.
Okay.
Describe your preschool morning routine, including your go-to teacher outfit.
Got you. Okay, so my preschool morning routine. When I wake up, I do like a morning devotional, pray, reflect. Then I do a 35-minute workout. Hit the shower. Yeah. I have to keep that's like my morning times are like my woosah moments before I go into my job. So
Yeah.
35-minute workout stretch, shower, eat breakfast, and then I put on my go-to work outfits. I don't have like a necessarily a per se outfit, but I will say my style is very like vintage, kind of retro. So I'm the type of person who will wear like a nice little blouse with the suit pants or the trousers and a cute little pair of sneakers. And I try to accessorize. Yeah, yeah.
That's
I like to look
cute.
cute. I like to look nice at work, but that's kind of like my style
It's
of
like
like
business breakdance.
yeah, basically business break dance. And I like me a nice little pair of jeans or some in the wintertime, since I'm in Michigan, jeans or some boots.
Mm-hmm.
And then a nice little sweater, but still like that retro style. So that's kind of like what I would say my style at work is, but still comfortable because I do not believe in people who wear flats, like those
Nope.
ground flats
No.
or the heels to work. I will never do
Uh-uh.
that. As
No,
a
no, no.
teacher, you would see me in some gym shoes or some canvases. And if I'm wearing sandals, there are those plush sandals where you could walk in there, your feet will not be hurting. Because the
Mm-hmm.
amount of working and standing I do in my job, absolutely not.
No.
No.
I'm gonna make a controversial statement. I'm gonna say my feet are warmer in a flip-flop than in a flat.
You know what? I can see that. Because
I'm
your
not
feet are
gonna be
breathing.
flattened around in Michigan. Absolutely not. I'm not gonna do
I
anything in
know,
Michigan
people,
unless
I
it's
know people
warm.
who do. In the winter months, it gets cold. But you know what? It's Michigan. One day it's cold, but then it's warm. And then it gets cold
I'm gonna
again.
come visit you when it's got like we got like a 60-degree
There
forecast.
we
Are you
there you
ready for
go.
rapid fire?
Yes, we could do some rapid fire.
One word only. I
Okay.
mean, and
Okay, I got
You
you.
know, I'm looking at you like,
Yes.
one word. Fill in the blank.
Okay.
I want my lunchbox to be packed with blank, and I don't want it to have a single blank.
I want my lunch packed with pretzels, and I don't want to have a single ounce of mayonnaise. No mayonnaise.
Mm-mm-mm-mm. You're not
No,
dipping those pretzels in mayonnaise.
no. I do not like mayonnaise at all, whatsoever.
No.
No.
All right, here we go. Favorite school supply.
Highlighters.
Mm-hmm. Yep, same.
Yes. Yeah.
Least favorite school dress up day.
Mm. You know what? At my school, we did a movie character day. Actually, no, scratch that, pajama day.
Hate
Scratch,
it?
and I did not care for pajama day, only because
That is
sometimes,
controversial.
so I know it's controversial, but sometimes it depends on the kind of pajamas people put on. There are some people who wear certain pajamas that I was not expecting to see, and it don't be the kids. Sometimes about staff members who participate. I'm like, I didn't. I didn't ask. I didn't ask. That's
We need
all
some
I'm saying.
stipulation. If
We need some
how
stipulation.
about like commercially approved pajama
Yes,
day? Like
exactly.
you're
Commercially
gonna be
approved pajama day.
in like a commercial for books for your kids.
Exactly.
Those are the pajamas you can wear.
The cozy and comfy pajama commercials you see on TikTok. Like those.
Those
Some
only.
of those only. Some of the other ones, I don't be a big fan of.
I can
Because
tell
I'm
you've
just
had
like,
that for a couple decades and it shows. This is the first time that I'm a convert. You're right. It's a
okay.
tricky one. All right. And last rapid fire question. What would you be teaching if it wasn't math or future educators?
I'll teach law. I'll see. Yes.
That you
I
wouldn't even
law and
think.
psychology. Law and psychology. It's actually interesting. When I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a lawyer first. When I was thinking about public service, I wanted to be a lawyer. But then my mom told me no because lawyers lie. And she said she does not want to have a daughter who
You heard
lies.
it here first, folks.
And that was her reasoning. That was her reasoning with her Christian church background. She's like, you don't lie, you're my daughter, and lawyers lie. And I was in the second grade. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lie.
Oh my
So
God, that is adorable.
so that was the main. So that's how I went from wanting to be a lawyer to going into like math. But I still like to read like law, psychology books. So I will most definitely teach something along the lines of like law 101 or psych 101. I actually have my minor in psychology, so I'll most definitely
Future
teach that.
educators is the first semester. Future lawyers or future psychologists is second semester.
Oh, I love that. There we go. Teach our kids how to, finesse and finagle their way around
That's
stuff.
right, because they're not
In the
already
legal
good
way.
enough
Right. In
off
the
the bat
legal way,
already.
though.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
the legal way.
In the non-liar way.
Right.
Did I say lawyer? I meant liar.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
It has been such a pleasure having you on this podcast. You are clearly like a leading light and in both like your behavior and your mindset and your attitude, but also in just like your deep ingenuity of like teaching a future educator class. Like I hope our listeners are like, I could do that. And like it's literally like this like giving this like circle that you're creating of just like, hey, you want to make our students better, help them understand teaching better. Oh, it's so beautiful. Camyrea, I'm so glad that you had joined us. Any last words you have for our listeners as a teaching populace of listeners?
Oh, wow. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Thank you so much. One thing I would probably just close out with is so all my teachers out there, young and veteran, keep being your authentic self. Don't allow what you're seeing in the classroom discourage you that you're not making an impact. You are making an impact. All the connections, the words, the actions that you say, it is hitting the kids way more than you realize. And just really, kept saying it, just really be a marigold, find your marigolds, but be a marigold too in your setting. Be a marigold. And then you'll be surprised to see the amount of growth and change you can do in a classroom within a year. And that's what I would close off with.
You heard it here, folks. Be a marigold. Thank you so much to our listeners. Thank you so much, Camyrea. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Teachers in America podcast, please email us at shape@hmhco.com. That's SHAPED at hmhco.com. Be the first to hear new episodes of Teachers in America by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate, review, and share it with your network. You can find the transcript of this episode on our Shaped blog by visiting hmhco.com/shaped. That's hmhco.com/SHAPED. The link is in the show notes. The Teachers in America podcast is a production of HMH. Thank you to the production team of Christine Condon, Tim Lee, Jennifer Corujo, Neo Fry, Thomas Velasquez, and Matt Howell. Thanks again for listening.